Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is around shaping India's story. We are the stories that we tell. We are the stories that we believe we are. And we are the inspiration for the generation to come. Much has been said about India's entrepreneurial DNA. With a willingness to take risks and aptitude for fast decision making, bold leadership, the Indian diaspora has always stood out. We are considered one of the most successful entrepreneurial communities around the world. To throw light on how female leaders here in this room are retelling the story of reinventing themselves and being a part of a successful nation, we have our next conversation. Well, our next conversation would be incomplete if I did not introduce our moderator first. Moderator, Suman Sasmal. I love how his introduction says, get things done. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, he is driven by that very passion. Powered by a purpose of having no person left behind in the fourth industrial revolution, Suman fulfills his mission in two ways. He works with startups and helps them succeed by driving better clarity, strategic 10x thinking, and organization building. In addition, he advises business leaders globally to help their organizations thrive at the disruptive intersection of technology and business. In addition to mentoring at NSRCEL, he is a global ambassador and coach for OpenEXO, a US-based business transformation advisory. He's a writer, a keynote speaker, and today he is our moderator. Joining Suman in this conversation, we have ex-member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, former professor, IIM Bangalore, Mr. Rajiv Gowda. He asked me to keep this introduction super short, and that's exactly what we have done. And joining the two gentlemen is IAS officer, and I have to say this, my father's greatest dream in life was that I would be an IAS officer one day. And for me, ma'am, this is an honor to be sharing this moment with you. Dr. Kalpana Gopalan, IAS, is a composite public policy professional. She has over 3 decades of work experience in the Indian Administrative Service, which spans across land administration, energy, handicrafts, urban management, youth, training, education. She is now the additional Chief Secretary, Labour and Public Grievance Redressal, Government of Karnataka. So namaskara to everybody and a very, very warm welcome to our first session after lunch. Let's see what you have for us in store and how do we shape India's future.
Hi, good afternoon. So with those great intros, I think let's dive in. So what's shaping up India's story? Now, certainly in the morning, we heard it from several folks who are literally on the front lines, building business, building ventures, essentially the business owners. Now is the time we need to switch gears. We need to look at the other side of the coin. Folks who are giving the structure, giving the necessary infrastructure to make it happen. Now, if I really look at, let me do a quick 3-point framing. So India is certainly a young country and therefore aspirational. And if we have to really go that far, we have to make sure we are, as a nation, we are firing from all cylinders. Young or old, men or women, IIT grads or school dropouts, everyone will have to come together and contribute to make this happen. This is not going to come easy for us. Second, yes, we are celebrating Falguni Nayar for the right reason. When is the next Falguni going to come up? That's the second framing. And the third, if I really look at the transition of our economies, we have kind of transitioned, you can say, or continuing to transition from a product-centric economy to a customer-centric economy. There are several differences, but one of the key differences is that empathy takes a center stage. Empathy becomes very critical. And there are countless studies today with the advances in neuroscience that proves that, yes, women have a better capacity for empathy. So therefore, are we looking at an unfair advantage that we have in women to really make this happen and lead in the, the decades ahead of us? So therefore, if I really look at it, my hypothesis for this conversation is that the stage is all set for women to take the center stage. Now, don't take my words for granted. We have lovely panelists today, And who better than Professor Rajiv and Kalpana can really throw some light. And I welcome them to this conversation and help me take this hypothesis forward. So welcome, Professor Rajiv, welcome, Kalpana.
Thank you, Suman.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. All right. So coming to Professor Rajiv, so being a resident mentor at NSRCEL over the last few years now, honestly, if I look at, I mean, I haven't kept a number-wise track, but certainly I have mentored many more women startups and small and medium business owners than males. Now, it could be an absolutely outlier data point, but for whatever it is worth, it is certainly hugely promising for me because I get to mentor many of them. Now, what I wanted to let you also know is that several of them today are coming from B towns and C towns. So now this is another data point. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. So my question to you is, how do you think this landscape has changed in India when it comes to inclusivity and empowerment of women over the last few years that you look at the country?
Well, what you're seeing, Suman, is actually the beginning of a wave. You know, in India, for decades or centuries for that matter, we've seen a very lopsided gender representation in terms of entrepreneurship or anything like that. And certainly you've seen a very lopsided representation from bigger cities and centers of economic action. But now things are changing, possibly because of the internet playing a leveling role, but also because aspirations have reached everywhere. The truth of the matter is, in India, if you were to get the women of India as involved in the economy formally as the men, our GDP would be off the charts. Our GDP growth would be off the charts, right? So we are actually underperforming, underutilizing this extraordinary strength that we have. And part of the reason is because we have historically, allocated social roles to different people, but that's changing. Education is reaching more and more people and is more inclusive. And along with education, higher education, opportunities like the NSRCEL Women Entrepreneurship programs, a lot of these are actually opening people's minds. And certainly you mentioned Falguni Nair. She's a role model for not just becoming a billionaire entrepreneur, but at the age of 50 plus, or starting at the age of 50 plus. So there's an opportunity to balance the different dimensions of life. Anyway, the basic point is that India is filled with potential. Okay, we need to scale what you and NSRCEL is doing to mega levels in order to convey to people, first, to kindle that aspiration and open their minds to the possibilities, then to get their support systems to also kick in and be encouraging, and then to provide the practical help that people need to set up and run a business. A lot of people, this was historically often kept in one community or something like that, and not necessarily, even our school and education has been more textbookish, less practical. So it's very possible. When I have seen in villages, in my own village, when I've seen women in self-help groups starting very micro enterprises and things like that, you can see that the thirst and capability is very much there, and it's really our lack of sense that we are underutilizing this extraordinary possibility.
Right. No, great. Very well put, because as you rightly said, GDP really taking off the charts. And when I believe it's women-led business helping not just grow the GDP, but the social impact that it creates because of the empowerment that they have, therefore. And I think social impact potentially will go off the charts, and that is something look forward to. Thank you so much. Kalpana, over to you now. You have been an alum of IIM. Now, today, when I look at some of these leading institutions of our country, I mean, not that they are the only benchmarks, certainly, but we have a data point. So lots of dots are getting connected today. When I looked at the IIM enrollments, the women enrollment is now in excess of 35%. Even if I look at tech institutions like IITs, it is over 25%. I don't have the latest figures, but even if it is 1 or 2 years ago, this was the kind of numbers we looked at. So do you really see a tipping point on the horizon?
I think you will not see the tipping point at all. It is happening as we speak. Because what is going on, we see the big, the big stars. Falguni is one example. But what is happening is a silent revolution where millions of small women are A, entering the workforce, B, entering entrepreneurship, C, taking on leadership roles. And that's happening, and as you pointed out, much more in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. It goes unnoticed, but as a collective, it marks a silent revolution. Now, why does the landscape itself matter? I firmly believe that women are no different from men when it comes to anything else, and when it comes to entrepreneurship, except biologically, there's no real difference. But the ecosystem, or the landscape as you called it, it impinges differently on women than it does on men. Now, if a male entrepreneur wants to start a venture, he would look probably at, his thinking or his actions would be limited to a good idea, getting a good team, getting substantial investment, business-related actions. For a woman, she looks much further than that. The family situation, the societal norms, safety and security, all these play a role when it comes to bringing women entrepreneurs onto center stage, as you called it. But for the very same reason, since it looks as though things are stacked up, or she has to look much wider and deeper before she, jumps into the pool, for that very reason, the smallest encouragement is sufficient to just, kindle that spark, to use Dr. Rajiv's words. I'll tell you an example. This girl, Meera Suresh, I had gone a couple of years ago before COVID to Rajgiri University in Cochin, and I had given a talk on entrepreneurship to MBA students there. And about a year later, I received this LinkedIn mail from Meera Suresh, who said that 1 year back you came to Rajgiri Business School, Kochi, to address the gathering and talk about empowerment and entrepreneurship. I was one among those students who keenly listened to your words. And it not only gave me some good time, but also helped me to start my own venture. Today, I have started my journey, a zero financial investment project with a whole woman team. And we named it Wordsmith. Thank you, ma'am, for the fire you have filled in us. Now, I didn't know Meera. I didn't speak to her particularly. She was part of an audience. And those words, whatever was said there, was enough to kindle that spark. So sometimes that, that very tiny nudge, push, that is enough. You wouldn't think that would be so. And I am so proud of Meera now, even though I never really met her. So that is, it's paradoxical that on one side you feel that, the ecosystem doesn't really favor. But on the other hand, it is enough that one tiny spark of encouragement is enough to, light the whole fire. So I think in a way, if you say unfair advantage, the unfair advantage is our ability to get inspired quite easily.
Excellent. Now, that's a lovely note that a simple word really can start a silent revolution. And you're so right. And basically, they have the ability to draw on a larger canvas. I think that's very important. So I think thanks for that. And I'm sure today, both of you will spark several such silent revolutions with the audience that we have today. Back to Professor Rajiv. So, of course, we talked about these huge aspirations ahead. And so therefore, we really need some force multipliers. Now, I know, of course, you put on the hat of a public policy academician and also intimately involved even at Delhi levels in those processes. what are some of the appropriate one or two things at a policy level that really is happening or should happen, whichever side of the conversation you want to talk about, to really make this happen and make it even more favorable and attractive? So any lights on that? You're on mute.
Yeah, so on that front, there are actually numerous possibilities, including in the domains where Kalpana is the additional chief secretary, and, the labor ministry in Delhi has been called labor and skill development. Now, so things like that, right? So basically, there's just, there's been a gap between our education system and the world of practice, of the real world of jobs and goods and services and manufacturing and everything else. So one attempt in the policy sphere has been to try and skill people so that they're better attuned to the kinds of opportunities that are emerging. But skilling itself is a fairly low aspiration activity, but still a very required one, and actually one that we've not been able to accomplish very well as a nation. Okay, so that's one gap. There's a bigger challenge, which is in the entrepreneurship side, right? See, the way services are expanding, the way the internet is leveling the playing field, so that Mira can set up a wordsmith organization virtually, possibly in in a part of Kerala, and could take on the whole world for that matter, without a Malayali accent. Who knows? The basic point is but we haven't taught people how to go about becoming businesses and running, all those essences which, NSRCEL is actually filling the gap. And that, what you're doing for a small group of people here, needs to be scaled, needs to be turned into a mass entrepreneurship movement, because in every town, in every village, there are possibilities for women and others to set up businesses of various kinds. And there's nothing to say that a bakery or a beauty parlor should only be in big cities. It should be there in every tier 3C, 3-4 town as well. And these are all, those are just two examples, but there's just so much that can be done in terms of, like you said, care-related activities, in terms of service domains, education, counseling. There's just no shortage of possibilities. But most people don't know what it takes to set up a business, to run it, to handle people, to handle finances. And so if you can create these kinds of modules and do some virtual mentoring, what you're doing for the lucky ones at NSRCEL, do this on a larger scale. And this is something, if the government also comes in with a small seed investment, if it can actually work with, create a team of mentors and create a small business support enterprise system or something like that, you'll be really unleashing a lot more talent, especially, that's in some ways what those mudra loans are supposed to be focused on, but you need a little more than what's being offered there. Not just the money, you need a lot more, insight and support. And that's the gap in the system, which in the policy, as a ex-member of parliament, and actually we had put this in the Congress manifesto, but we didn't get elected to implement it. Nonetheless, this is the story there.
No, I get it. Absolutely. I think it's three-dimensional to skills. Skills could be very fundamental. It is age-old. But still the importance of skills, it's multidimensional. The length, breadth, and the depth of skills can certainly play a big role in this whole process. And in terms of scaling up, Professor, this is just, I'm sure you might be knowing, COVID has, of course, done a whole lot of damage to the whole world, including India. But one of the good things, because of the technology adoption, to me, it is the Chief Transformation Officer. It's a silent Chief Transformation Officer for any company, for any society, and even for a country. Today, the number of, therefore, women entrepreneurs whom we get into our programs is absolutely unthinkable, because previously they would have to come to Bangalore to attend some of those in-person sessions. Today, it's all virtual, and therefore the numbers have gone off the charts. So thank you for that, bringing the dimension out.
Yeah, just one last sentence. So when you think about, aspirations for a $5 trillion economy or things like that, if you were able to seed and create so many more entrepreneurs across the length and breadth of the country who are, creating new value, employing more people, 5 trillion will be small change. Okay, it's nothing compared to what potential we have as a society, as an economy.
Sure, thank you. Kalpana, today, of course, on the comment that I made last, today, it's a tech society, tech world that we all live in, that we understand. Now, tech is, at times, I feel, could be a double-edged sword. At one level, especially coming to the women entrepreneurs, I think it has leveled the playing field significantly, and it is going to do so even further going forward. On the other, I may get a feel, it's my personal feeling, could be a bit sexist feeling. I think tech could be at the same time a handicap for several women, especially the kind of women that we are talking about, coming from the smaller towns and so on and so forth. So do you think this is a handicap, number one? And if so, what is it that comes to your mind to really overcome that? And if not, what else do you think could be an unfair advantage that we have, can easily counter even the shortcoming that we have? For example, we didn't have landlines, but we kind of leapfrogged. So anything like that? So it's a broad question, but if you can just throw some of your lights, please.
Tech can be a handicap if tech is not available. It's as simple as that, but that's not particularly for women. So, when you're speaking of women, the direct way to address is what the professor spoke of: skilling, mentoring, and there are people to do that, investing. But there is also the broader thing that let them be, leave them free to do what they want to do. Not obstructing itself can be a great contribution. You see that if you are not harassed, if you are left alone to do what you wish to do, and instead we concentrate. And again, I don't like this thing of policymaker, it is society, it is all of us, the citizenry. We invest as a people in better transport, cleaner spaces, availability of places where you can, work, or you want to sell, then you can display your products. I remember when I was a student in IIMB, weavers came. I was at that time in one of those, developmental departments, and so I brought weavers saris, and they displayed it in one of our festivals, and we used to have them pretty frequently before COVID came into our lives. So they displayed their wares. So having spaces like that, if let us say a woman is selling vegetables, we have right opposite my home, I have a woman selling vegetables every morning. She spreads it on the pavement, and if the motorist does not drive on the pavement and takes care to drive on the road, that itself can help her do her business. So tech or non-tech, if we create a climate where people can do what they wish to do in a free, compatible way, then that will go as far as skilling and mentoring also will. So that is something, and that doesn't need the policymaker. Again and again, it is we as a people who ought to, decide that this is the way we want our city to be. This is the way we want our country to be. Right. And then go ahead. And it will be, tech is, of course, a double-edged dagger, but connectivity is improving. I see just improvement. It is slow. It is not as fast. Now we have had to play catch up because of COVID, but this is not a very distant dream. I think within our country we will be able to get connectivity. So, maybe in the next 5 to 7 years is what I am expecting.
Right. So while what you are saying, if I heard you right, access has certainly improved many-fold, but still, there are, last mile issues and so on. And skills is the very fundamental thing, very loud and clear, coming from both Professor Rajiv and yourself. In fact, just an anecdotal reference for folks, we all know Alibaba, the big Chinese company. So their bank is called My Bank. So My Bank they have been offering micro loans to some millions of entrepreneurs. They are actually taking 10,000 women entrepreneurs, the small and medium business, as kind of one batch, one big batch, and they are doling out huge digital education, including how to set up a website and stuff like that, to really enable them and go for big stuff. So yeah, absolutely, scaling. And it's truly not about policy. It's truly not about government. There are so many things that can be done even otherwise, just to enable that. Okay, so some very last two questions. I'm just being mindful of the time we have. Professor Rajiv, so we can look at it two ways. Policies leading to action. I know we don't like policies at some level, but at the other time, there are also actions which lead to making of policies. When I look at, for example, let's look at this blockchain and others, and this is a global issue, nothing to do with India. Innovation today is clearly running miles ahead of legislations, policies, and so on. So where do you think is the sweet spot of intersection? I mean, one way or the other. Your views, please. You're on mute.
I live in an area with tremendous traffic noise, so I keep it on mute as much as possible. Anyways, the basic thing is that there's no one sweet spot. This is going to keep evolving, right? So, Facebook was a social network. Today, it is a massive enterprise, driven by advertising, which can also sort of polarize people and have political impacts and things of that sort, right? But because of network effects, it ends up becoming the monopolist in its space. And today, if you go back to 15 years ago, you would only see Microsoft as the one company in the top 10, global top corporations. Today, you have, Alphabet, Apple, Microsoft, Google, maybe that's already there. And then a couple from China, Alibaba included, right? And so the world is just dramatically transformed. And for those of us who are policy makers, we do have a responsibility to respond. What do we mean by that? We have to make sure that there's competition, scope for further innovation. We need to make sure that there's no exploitation or political impacts. Data, if that's what people are harvesting, there's nothing free, you're giving away your data, then how do you protect data? So there are lots of policy dimensions. So action, which follow the action that has already opened up. So no one's going to try and come in the way of more breakthroughs and more transformation. But there are also times when some of these changes can threaten the existing structure of establishments. I used to be a director on the Central Board of the Reserve Bank of India. And the Reserve Bank is very concerned about, decentralized finance, about cryptocurrency, and wondering how to deal with digital currency, the new waves of neobanks, all these sorts of things. So these are all, so the policymaker, the regulator, we have responsibilities in terms of taking care of the orderly growth and protection of citizens, of nations, currencies, whatsoever. And so there's a lot of catching up, but not at the cost of innovation, I'm sure.
Excellent. Thank you. So coming to you, Kalpana. So shaping up India's story. Now, you have put on perhaps innumerable hats in your long career of what you have been doing. The unique advantage that you have given your role is that not only you have a closer view of the policy making process, being also one of the leading policymakers, but also the implementation. I think that's very important. So you really have seen up close where rubber meets the road. Now, we have come as a nation long way. Women have come a long way. Our societies have evolved, evolving, continuing to evolve. Technologies have evolved, evolving, all of that good stuff. Sitting where you are today, if I really have to check with you, one thing that you didn't know or something that was very frustrating even a few years ago, and something that you know today, which is a huge source of inspiration, even to someone like you and to our potential audience out here. I would like you to say that out so that that becomes the takeaway as an inspiration for the numerous folks who are joining this program today and is going to listen to in the future, so that they know that as a nation, we are very supportive of everything, every effort that is coming together to shape up our story. Over to you, ma'am.
What I didn't know and know now.
Or I'll leave it to you. Or you know better, deeper, I'll leave it to you.
What I didn't know was my own potential and my capacity to fulfill it. And what I didn't know was the potential of people around me and their own capacity to fulfill it. And it is when you are thrown into situations, when the situation itself demands, then you rise to that occasion. Dr. Rajiv Gowda used to ply us with a lot of assignments, and we didn't know that we could pull all-nighters, but we did. So, so it happens that, the ecosystem should support, mentor, be kind, but at the same time, it should be challenging enough that it should draw you out of yourself, because it is very easy for anyone, and women in particular, because they have been, for centuries brought up in a shell. I myself was. So we won't know that we can, rise to meet the occasion. And if there's something which I should leave the audience with, that we should not let the next generation think that they cannot fulfill their own potential. Because I see in my own children that they are so self-reliant. It is very surprising, because to me they are still children, but they just go about their work. They are so very professional. They put their very best, and they don't get perturbed by what the winds of change, so to say. They just move and turn and sway, and they do the job. So that is something which I have seen tremendously. I have seen women who could not read and write, and then you push them, you tease them, you cajole them, and then one day they learn to read, and then they learn to sign, and they are so joyous. It gives a new meaning to life, which I didn't know, because for me signing was a natural thing. I was taught in school and I just did it. So there is the tremendous capacity that each of us have, which the first thing for all of us as a society is not to stymie it in any way.
Right.
And then if we can help to nurture that too.
Sure. Thank you so much. If you were saying, ma'am, that even you are discovering your potential, so the point is not only you are doing that, you are helping others like Meera Suresh do that. And I think this is really something that has brought or bringing the woman onto the center stage. So folks, I started with my hypothesis that the stage is all set for women to take the center stage. I'm finishing up by saying, hey, you are already on the center stage. Come on, just win the world. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Rajiv and Kalpana. Thank you.
Thank you, Suman.
Bye.
That was such a pleasure.